South China Morning Post, 14th of April 2023, China offers President Lula of Brazil a red carpet welcome and pledges to strengthen relations. Brazil is highly dependent on China and in desperate need of markets for its agricultural products, which causes it to act foolishly. In Beijing on Friday, Chinese President Xi Jinping, who needs allies, threw out the red carpet for his Brazilian colleague and promised to collaborate to strengthen bilateral ties. Xi first congratulated Lula on his third term in office and praised him for traveling despite a recent illness during a meeting at the Great Hall of the People. "You arrived from afar not long after healing. This demonstrates how highly you value the ties between our two nations," Xi added about Lula's pneumonia attack last month. According to Xi, China and Brazil are comprehensive strategic partners that share extensive common interests because they are the most potent emerging nations in the Eastern and Western hemispheres, respectively. China always views and develops relations with Brazil from a strategic height and a long-term perspective and places China-Brazil relations as a diplomatic priority, the official added. Xi promised to collaborate with Lula to create new trade and economic growth opportunities between the two nations. The Chinese president stated, "I am confident that the continued, healthy, and steady growth of China-Brazil ties will undoubtedly play an active and vital role in the peace, stability, prosperity, and development of the region and the globe." The Ukrainian situation was also a topic of discussion between the two leaders, who concurred that conversation and discussions were the only practical solutions, according to state broadcaster CCTV. The report also urged other nations to support a political resolution to the problem actively. Following their discussions, the two presidents signed several agreements to cooperate in various fields, including trade and investment, the digital economy, and aerospace. Lula visited Premier Li Qiang earlier in the day, who told him that China was eager to improve coordination and communication with Brazil on multilateral issues and contribute more to defending the rights and interests of developing nations, according to China National Radio. Lula said through Twitter that the two nations would work to expand trade and balance world geopolitics after the meeting. The two nations' strategic alliance is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. According to Li, China plans to use the occasion to advance all-around, multi-level, and high-level cooperation to a new level. According to Lula, Brazil places a high value on its ties with China and is eager to expand its collaboration in politics, the economy, trade, education, science and technology, and culture. He said that the two nations should work together to preserve the interests of emerging countries, improve communication and coordination on international issues, and create a more peaceful and stable world. Meetings with Zhang Zhigong, president of China's State Grid Corporation, and Zhao Ji, chairman of the National Legislation of China, were also scheduled for the Brazilian President's Day. He laid a wreath at the monument to the People's Heroes in Tiananmen Square as a mark of respect for China's military heroes. The Brazilian leader landed in Shanghai late on Wednesday and was there for Dilma Rousseff's inauguration as head of the BRICS New Development Bank on Thursday. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa founded the bank in 2014 to aid in the sustainable growth of its member nations. Lula criticized the U.S. dollar's hegemonic standing in an address at the bank on Thursday, asserting that circumstances had changed and that other currencies should now have a more significant say in the world economy. "I ponder this question to myself every night: why must all nations conduct dollar-backed trade? Why aren't we able to work on currency-backed transactions?" Chinese official media cited him as saying. Why is it that the new development bank cannot offer loans in the national currencies of its members? We may do something new because we are in the 21st century, not because we are used to utilizing the US dollar. China and Brazil decided to implement yuan settlement in transactions in February to lessen their reliance on the US dollar. The International Monetary Fund was also criticized by Lula, who said it had been overly harsh in requiring debt-ridden nations like Argentina to decrease spending in exchange for bailout financing. During his brief visit to Shanghai, Lula also stopped by a Huawei wireless communications facility and spoke with representatives of BYD, one of China's leading manufacturers of electric vehicles. Zhang Shixu, director of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences Institute for Latin American Studies, believes that Lula's visit will allow the Chinese and Brazilian presidents to discuss agreements about the Belt and Road Initiative. Brazil has not signed any Belt and Road Initiative agreements during Jair Bolsonaro's presidency since Brazil had been severely impacted by U.S. policy over the previous 3 years. Before Friday's meetings, Zhang said, "Now there's a good chance Lula will do so." He said Xi and Lula would also discuss ways to resolve the Ukraine problem and propose a proposal for the US, EU, or UN to consider. The relationship between the two countries will undoubtedly advance more quickly after Lula's visit. Regarding handling the relationship with the US, Lula must exercise political wisdom and refrain from taking a side in the Sino-US conflict, Zhang said. More than 150 nations and 32 international organizations had signed agreements for cooperation on the Belt and Road with China by the end of last year, but Brazil was not one of them. China has been charged with utilizing the initiative as a debt trap because certain nations are having trouble repaying project financing. China denies this accusation. During his 4-day visit, the 77-year-old Brazilian president was joined by a delegation that included several high-ranking business executives, Senate President Rodrigo Pacheco, and Finance Minister Fernando Haddad. Brazil exports soybeans, cattle, and iron ore primarily to China, its top export market. According to Chinese customs data, Brazil is China's 10th largest commercial partner, with bilateral trade increasing by 4.9% to $171.5 billion last year.